Good morning and hello, and welcome to Merge Sticks, Garden Picks, and Hero Flicks, the three favorite things in the world. I've been wanting to do a podcast for a really long time now, in one size or another. For a long time, I wanted to do a Marvel podcast for the MCU, and then I wanted to do a knitting podcast, and then I'm really into gardening, and I've been watching a lot of gardening podcasts. So I finally just decided, fuck it, I'm going to give it a shot. At least maybe my friends can watch it. So we're sitting in my bedroom in my house in Minneapolis, Minnesota on a Saturday morning because it's quiet in my house and I can get filming done. Sorry, this is take number 3 and I was parched. This is my boss. She's my bossy boss. She's very bossy. She has opinions. And her opinions is I should not talk. I should only pet her. So she's mad because I am talking. This is my stash shelves. I think I should confess I do have a lot more stash in the basement. But it is not stash I bought. It's stash I inherited. So I don't feel guilty about it. But this is the stuff I spent money on for myself. I do not have a finished product to actually, I do have a finished product that I just finished this week. So knitting last year was tricky. Didn't knit much. I got off to a hell of a start in the spring. Did I say my name? My name's Mary. I got off to a hell of a start in the spring in 2020. Then the pandemic hit and I just stopped knitting for the rest of 2020. Didn't knit another stitch. 2021 I picked it back up again in January. And one of the things I had been working on last year was a wingspan. And when I started knitting again in January, I picked it back up, got down to the wingtips, ran out of yarn, had to get more yarn to finish the wingtips. I think it turned out pretty well. I was happy enough knitting it. And so what happens to me is I start knitting something and I really like the way it's turning out. Then I'm like, ooh, I wonder what it looked like in different colors. I knit in 2018, I think. There is a hat designed by, I believe it's Hopi Locatelli, called Flowers. I don't remember the name of it. Anyway, it's a lovely slip stitch little hat designed to go specifically with Malabrigo Rios yarn. And the way it knits up, the slip stitches end up being carried up and out over 2 rows, and they just pull out those colors and they're just little pops. Maybe it is called Field of Flowers. I think it's Field of Flowers. And I just fell in love. And so I went to the basement into the stash I inherited and pulled out every color of Rios that was there, which was like 20. And then I bought several other skeins and just knit that hat over and over and over again to see how it would look in all of the different colors. Yeah, I know it's crazy, but I did it. So I knit that wingspan, and I got to the point where I ran out of yarn and had to wait for another skein of yarn to get ordered because I was knitting that for a friend, so I didn't buy the yarn. I had to wait for her to make her choice and send it to me. So I went to the basement into the stash and pulled out a skein of yarn from the stash I inherited and started making another wingspan. And a friend of mine was in love with the pattern and fell in love with the colors and asked if she could buy it from me. So when this one's done, she's already purchased it from me, and I will mail that off to Hawaii. And then I have 2 more to make after that other people have purchased from me. So I'll be knitting wingspans for a while. This is some marble bag. See, I'm not lying. I love me some marble. Oh, this one is the shirt that says "She's Got Help." It's the scene from Endgame. I almost screamed out loud at that scene. I'm not going to lie. That made me so happy. And so then another thing I'm currently working on. I have 3 projects going right now because they all require different brain. And so depending on the brain I have available, I knit on one of them. This is a papillon or a butterfly shawl by Marin something. I forgot. But a friend of mine bought this yarn for me ages and ages and ages ago to make this for her. And it sat on the shelf 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 because I was intimidated by the short rows. I'm not gonna lie. I have knit a few socks. I have never knit a sock that I'm happy with, really. But the one thing that it's taught me is that I hate wrap and turn. I really hate wrap and turn. I think I always make a wrap and turn that looks like utter shit. So I found a pattern from Woolly Wormhead that was a hat with German short rows, and I'm like, I'm going to teach myself German short rows, and I'm going to knit this hat. And I knit that hat, and I loved it. And then I knit another hat immediately, and then I went, I must knit a bunch of these hats, just like I did with the Field of Flowers. I went down into the stash, I pulled out a bunch of colors, I bought the rest of the pattern, short row patterns in that series that she had, because it was she published a whole series of short row hats. I purchased them all, and I started putting yarn together and making short row hats. I think I made 14 or 15. I would knit another one in a hot second. I love them. I finally knit one for myself this year. And I use my own yarn for the hats. I had bought some BFL from Utopia, and they were just lovely fall colors, which I don't know if you can tell, but fall and orange are my favorite colors. And so I knit it up, and it's great, and I wish I left my house more these days in the wintertime, because when it's wintertime and it's a pandemic, I hardly ever leave my house. Shocking, right? But I knit that up this year for myself, and I loved how it turned out. It's great. But so I knit a whole bunch of those hats, conquered the German short row, and those hats are all garter stitch. And then I'm like, okay, so let me adapt it to this butterfly. Pulled this butterfly out and got started on it last week. And yes, last week, I think last Friday. And got started on it and realized it's all garter stitch too. So all of that practice was of those hats, perfect. Like, I am German short rowing the heck out of this papillon, and it's going great. I'm loving it. But it's a lot of stitch counting, and because the shawl, you add the 4 stitches, you make one at the edge and then you make one at the center to have the growth. Well, because you add 4 stitches every increase row, I've got the counts marked out every 10 stitches, but then at the edges you have to keep adding markers as you get up to 10. So it makes it tricky to make sure you're counting out the right number of stitches, and every section where you add on the panes of color, it's right here, Mary, pick it up. Every section where you add on the panes of color are like here, this one here. The counts are different. And so then as you knit back and forth, like, so as I'm knitting this section, you're adding stitches still here, so the counts keep changing in the middle of what so yeah, it's, you have to pay attention. And sometimes my brain is not up for paying attention to counts. So that gets knit when my brain is up for that. And then the last thing on the needles right now is I had a skein of Freya ombre sitting on my shelf. And I pulled it down and tried to make color work with it. And unfortunately, the skein I had to go with it was a single. And it's a single with a twist, and it was not working out at all. And this is real grabby, and so it just kept grabbing onto the single, like just, so the stitches weren't turning out very nicely, and I'm like, I ripped it all out. And then when I really want the skein of yarn to go away, I do not want it to sit on my shelf and mock me anymore, being bright pink, because I hate pink. I have trauma with pink. Growing up, my mother did not let me choose my own clothes pretty much all the way through high school. She would buy what she liked, and I had to wear it. And she liked me in pink. And the problem is I look good in pink, and I don't care anymore. I hate pink. I think I maybe own one thing that's kind of pink, and it's really bright pink, really vibrant. So, but in general, I don't like pink. And so I just would like this skein to go away. So I'm knitting a Reina. Started it 2 days ago. And I'm almost done. I should be able to finish it today because I don't have, all of my garden projects are for tomorrow when it's supposed to be cool. Today's supposed to get up to 84 and it's muggy outside today because it's going to storm again tonight. So I put off all of my garden projects for tomorrow because it's time for fall garden projects. Like I need to dig some beds for where some tulip bulbs are going to go, and I want to put in some iris bulbs in the front, and so I need to dig that. But I'm digging into grass, so I have to dig it up and then knock the dirt all off the bottom and get rid of the grass roots. So it's work. So I'm going to make my grown kid lives with me, and I'm going to make my grown kid help me, because while my grown kid lives with me and contributes like an adult, I make sure everything gets paid on time, and I'm the one that replaces the toilet paper and then just charges them for the toilet paper, etc. So when I need help, I am not shy about being like, hey, I need you to help me, come on. But that's all tomorrow. So today should be, I need to run a couple of errands and then knit. And so this should be finished by the end of the day for sure. And then I can find someone, and then I'll block it out overnight, and then I can find someone to take it out of my house, and I never have to see it again. I did mess up. If you're familiar with the Reina, this is supposed to be twice as wide here, but I wasn't paying attention. It was yesterday morning early when I started this section, and I was watching a TV show that required me to read subtitles, and I wasn't looking at the pattern closely enough, and I'm like, oh, last time it was 8, yeah, it was 16 repeats this time, and I got half that. So I added extra repeats onto this section, and then I started my last mesh section and waited out last night, and I should get about 4 more repeats of the mesh section and then bind it off. So that won't take that long, and then it can be gone. And then I'll work mainly on the papillon. I tend to only like to have 2 projects on the needles at the same time. I'm very much a completionist. I'll set one aside if, like, I run out of yarn and have to wait for more yarn to come in, or I got to a point that has really detailed work that I need to absolutely focus on, and I'll put that off until a day like today, where instead of doing a podcast, I would have just sat this morning with the TV off and just focused on the knitting and got it done. But this morning I wanted to talk instead. But once I've got this off the needles, I'll probably finish the papillon next. Keep chugging away on the wingspan. After the papillon is off, I want to do a Celadon shawl, which I think is by Amba O'Brien. I forget. I've had it in my queue. I bought it like 6 years ago. Had it in my queue forever. And finally decided what colors I want to use. I inherited a bunch of Miss Babs gradient sets in the extra stash in the basement, and they're not particularly my color choices. They're not my color palette, so it's taken me a while to decide what I want to do with them. But there's a set down there called Redbirds, which is grays, reds, and then a dark charcoal. And I bought just this week some undyed to go with it on the ends, some naked. And then I'm going to knit that up. Not really my colors, but I'm sure that I can find a home for it. Oh, did I show this off? This I finished this year. It is my Find Your Fade. I had been wanting to do one again for years, since it very first came out and was really popular. And I had been collecting really bright skeins of hedgehog fiber. You can see the pinks, the bright yellow at the end, and holding on to it. And this spring, when I got started in it again, I'm like, yeah, it's time. So I pulled them all out, laid them all out, consulted with friends who have better color understanding than I did, decided the order to put them in, got started, changed the order in the middle, liked the order better, decided I had left the skein that I wanted for the very end at home, and I was visiting someone over the winter, and so I set this aside till I got home and then put this final bright orange on the end. And I love it. I love it so much. It is, if there is a statement piece that screams Mary, that's it, because I like it bright and I like it loud. Shang-Chi is coming up in about a week and a half, and I am so excited. I live in Minneapolis, and Minnesota is about 70% vaccinated. And so while we do have a surge in cases here in Minneapolis, it's mainly our Somali community. They got hit really hard with being othered and being, looked at with suspicion after 9/11, and then after a couple of kids from here were found to have gone and joined, I think it was ISIS. They were radicalized, and so the Somali community got hit really hard. So they're pretty insular, and so a lot of misinformation about the pandemic is running through their community, and they have been leery of getting vaccinated, which, it's hard to blame them, to be perfectly honest. I'm worried about them because I don't want them to get COVID, but I understand why they're leery. I just hope that we can get some outreach to them and get them vaccinated. All that said, not many Somali families tend to go to the movies, I've noticed. So, myself, my sister, my brother-in-law, and one of my long-term nerd girl Marvel watching movies have tickets to go to Shang-Chi on Thursday night, September the 2nd, at our favorite theater, which has a VIP seating section, reserved seats, and we will be masked the entire time. Normally, if there was a Marvel movie coming out, I would already have 3 or 4 different viewings set up because I set up normally on Thursday night, I take like 30 to 50 people, and for Infinity War, it was like 70. I buy all the tickets, and then everybody gives me money. I coordinate everything. We all show up. We all see it together, and then we can all nerd out together. For this showing, for like a new character, I would normally get 30, 40 people to go. And then I would take other people over the weekend who didn't want to come to Thursday night or who couldn't come to Thursday night. I would go back and see it several more times over the weekend with different groups of people. Yeah, I won't be going back this time. I'm willing to risk it. I want to see it. I'm willing to risk going to the theater to see it in theater opening weekend, but only once. So I'm really kind of put out that they made the choice not to make it available on D Plus as well. As I understand, it's completely Feige's choice. He's the one that really did not want Marvel movies going to the streaming platform, and I understand he's making content specifically for the streaming platform, and he has an idea of how they weave together, and he's very big on representation on the big screen, and so he did not want Shang-Chi's presentation to be, I think he thinks of it as punted to D+. He felt like the Asian community needed their Black Panther moment to get to see themselves represented on screen, and I'm all behind that. I'm just like, but it's a pandemic, Kevin. Come on now. But what are you gonna do? 45 days after it premieres, so a month and something, it'll be available. It will be available for viewing in home before the Eternals drops in November for my birthday. I guess that's the important part, is people will be able to see it at home if they don't get to the theater, to be prepped for the next one that drops. So I guess we've hit all three things today in the podcast. We've hit the knitting, the garden, and now the hero movies. I enjoyed doing this. I would like to try to do it again. If you enjoyed watching, please come back. It probably won't be a week, because until I figure out how to do this better, it'll probably be more like every few days that I do this while I tinker with it, because I now have no idea how to edit. I'm filming this, I'm going to upload it to YouTube. I have no lights, I have no camera. This is my phone that I've jimmy rigged up on a step ladder using a paper towel tube wrapped to the top to give it something to hold the phone. It is some janky stuff, let me tell you what. But I've wanted to do this for a while, so I'm going to keep chugging away at it. We'll see how it goes. Thanks. Have a good day.